All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program. You know, we're talking Johnny Cuba, European roots, a Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. Go to johnnycuba.us. Use the Johnny Locator. You'll find the nearest location to you. How else are we going to enjoy all of the college football action this weekend than with a nice cold Johnny Cuba on our hand? Make sure you always drink responsibly. And don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Our pal is CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert Jamey Eisenberg joins us every Thursday with all the fantasy football advice. Now, next week, we'll be able to get to the real stardom, sit-up advice, and all that good stuff. We'll get you some last-minute tips here if you got your draft coming up this weekend, like I do, for instance. Got my draft on Sunday night during the Canes-Notre Dame game. That's okay. But first, Jamey, I want to start out by asking you, we got college football. All right, we got the full slate. Actually, get started. We got college football on tonight. You got UCF is in action this evening, all right? But this weekend, full slate of college football, including the Gators. How are you feeling about both of our alma mater going into the season?
I mean, I feel good. You know, it certainly feels better than the last couple of years, mostly because it feels like the quarterback situation is going to be in a positive as opposed to a question mark. So I think we'll go as DJ Lagway goes. You know, if he has an opportunity for a big season, which it seems like, then we have a chance to be competitive. We know the SEC is tough, so it's going to be a difficult road. Obviously, that game against Miami is going to be tough as well. So I think if they can get off to a good start, then we'll see how things play out throughout the course of the season. But, you fall behind in the SEC, it's going to be a little difficult. So it should be an exciting season. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing them, how they, get started. I'm not the biggest Billy Napier fan. I don't know how many people are. But listen, if his recruiting classes start to show up, then we might have a chance for a good season.
What do you think is a successful season for them?
SEC championship game. I mean, listen, the bar was raised in the 90s with Steve Spurrier. You can't go back and just hope that, we start to become a competitive team again. Like, you got to win championships, So if they make it to the SEC title game, then I think you say a successful season, which means they would have probably beaten Georgia and probably beaten Tennessee and, hung with the big boys. And if that's the case, then they're on the right track.
I'll get one more college football question out of you here, and then we'll get to the NFL stuff. What do you make of all the hype around Arch Manning, Texas, Ohio State? That's where I'm off to tomorrow morning. I'm going to Columbus for college football tailgate for number 1 versus number 3. Are you dialed into that on Saturday afternoon?
Absolutely. How can you not be? It should be a great, really the first premier game, first marquee game that we're all looking at. I think the expectations for Arch Manning are a little bit too unrealistic. The last name is always going to be a problem unless he is that good. But you're asking him to be, Hall of Fame, maybe in the case of one of his uncles, Mount Rushmore good, So I don't know if he'll live up to that, but I'm excited to see how he, plays as the starter over the course of a full season. He's got enough talent around him to succeed. This is going to be a great test. Will he live up to it? I hope so.
Let's do some NFL news and notes over the last few days before we get to some fantasy advice. Adam Thielen gets traded back to Minnesota. What does that mean for Thielen in Minnesota? And what does it now mean for Carolina and Bryce Young?
It's, I think, better fantasy-wise. I'm doing a real-time draft as we're talking. So it's better in Carolina from the standpoint of it opens now. It clears the runway, essentially, for the 3 young receivers, 2 in particular that I'm very excited about. One would be Teteroa McMillan, their first-round pick. Not that I think Thielen was going to be so much of a speed bump for him, but that was a guy in terms of Thielen that Bryce Young relied on last year. And I think anytime you get a veteran player that does the right things, and Adam Thielen being the slot receiver was going to get probably too many targets if you're in the McMillan camp. So it now puts him round 4, round 5 range for me. He was already in the round 5 range. McMillan was anyway.
So McMillan's like a wide receiver 2 for fantasy?
Yeah, he's a top 20 guy. It just opportunity was there already. And now, again, there's no really anything that should be keeping him from, 120 plus targets and being that guy for Bryce Young, who did take a big step forward after he was benched last year for Andy Dalton. The last 3 games, he averaged over 30 fantasy points per game. So it looked like a legitimate quarterback as opposed to a guy that might have been a little lost. In the case of the other guys there, really love the setup for Jalen Coker, who's now the slot receiver. So great late round pick. A guy that if you already had your drafts, you could probably find on waivers. And then we'll see if Xavier Legette can finally start to, produce at a high enough level in his second season after a disappointing rookie campaign. In Minnesota, they have the 3-game suspension for Jordan Addison, so that's where Thielen will have his most his best opportunity. It's a great start to the schedule. I know they open with Chicago and then they get Cincinnati. I don't know who the third game is, but fourth game they come back and then they get Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and then a bye week. So we'll see sort of how quickly Jordan Addison gets his legs underneath him. I would guess by the middle of the season, Thielen is not so much of a factor. At least that would be the hope because of what Justin Jefferson and Addison are capable of doing. T.J. Hockenson as well. So it was a smart move to help J.J. McCarthy, who is another sleeper quarterback. But I think just in terms of where we're looking at from the long term, Thielen the first 3 games, everybody else should be fine after that.
Rashee Rice is going to serve a 6-game suspension. So what do we do with him if we're having our fantasy draft coming up this weekend? And who is there a wide receiver for Kansas City now worth targeting that may get some attention?
Xavier Worthy was awesome last year at the end of the season. You can't take something away positive from the Super Bowl for the Chiefs and say it wasn't him. So I know some of the plays at the end of the game came against backups, but still, like the way that he performed down the stretch was top 10 wide receiver good. Now, can he do that at the start of the season? Potentially. Can he do it over the course of the full season when Rice is back? Probably not, but I think he could still be a top 20 caliber player rest of the way. And look, there was some questions after the way last season ended. To me, he feels a lot like Tyreek Hill early in his tenure with the Chiefs because he could do some of those gadget plays. He's obviously as fast as anybody in the league. And when you have that type of play caller and quarterback, like they're going to maximize that potential. So I love the setup for Xavier Worthy. I would take him in the round 4 range as well. For Rice, I think round 6 is a good spot for him. It's easier to do it in a 2-receiver league compared to a 3-receiver league. So if you're in a 2-receiver league, you don't have to draft him as a starter. You draft him as one of your high-end reserves. By the time he gets back, you have potentially a top 2-round player. He's that good and going to get that much opportunities in this offense. So round 4 for me for Worthy, round 6 for Rice. And I did bump up Travis Kelce as well. It's not an engagement ranking increase. It is a situation ranking increase. But let's be real. Look, you're a married man. I'm a married guy. When we were getting married, we got in the best shape of our life, right? So hopefully that's the case for Kelce as well. Now that he's engaged.
Let's take a look at some rookies here. Who are some rookies that could actually help us this season?
The running back class is loaded. So about Ashton Genty. He's going to be the first one drafted. Will likely be a first-round pick in most leagues. When you get past him, there is a trio of rookie running backs that I think are going to sort of define the position this year because they're in some crowded situations, at least right now. But Omarion Hampton, he's got Najee Harris. Travion Henderson, he's got Ramondre Stevenson. And R.J. Harvey, he's got J.K. Dobbins. I would take all 3 rookies well ahead of their backfield mates. And I would take Hampton late round 2, early round 3, depending on how quickly running backs come off the board. I would take Henderson mid to end of round 3, especially if it's PPR. And I would take Harvey as early as round 4. He's the one that kind of falls the latest. So if you're drafting and not on CBS, because we have him ranked a little bit higher, we did a show today where we were comparing some other sites, and on ESPN you can get him in the 70s. Great value for a guy that I think is going to be really good in Sean Payton's offense there for Denver. There's some other rookie running backs that are going to be really fun to draft, and you're going to have to just be a little patient with them. One guy in Miami, for example, Ollie Gordon. Now that Jalen Wright is going to miss the start of the season, Devon Achane's got this calf problem that we don't know how long it's going to linger. Hopefully he's fine.
I think Ollie Gordon's going to be a guy for them.
I think he's going to be a guy for them with Achane, and he could be a monster without Achane. So
yeah,
he's somebody that I have, really risen up the draft boards. I would take him as early as like round 9. Dylan Sampson could be the starting running back for the Browns with the Quinshon Judkins situation going on there. I'm losing a little bit of confidence in Caleb Johnson because of the other running backs there in Pittsburgh, but he's still going to have an opportunity to potentially lead them in carries. Jaden Blue and Bashal Tutin could eventually be starters for their respective teams. Blue's in Dallas, Tutin's in Jacksonville. And then you look at the receiving core. Again, already mentioned Tedero McMillan. Emeka Abuka has a chance to be awesome for
my son is raving about this guy.
Yeah, your son's a smart guy. When you look at the situation in Tampa right now, the injury to Chris Godwin, not as bad as we initially thought because he's going to start the season on the active roster, but they don't expect him to play right away. And Jalen McMillan's dealing with a neck injury. So Abuka could be second on the team in targets behind Mike Evans. Travis Hunter is such a wild card right now. Could play a lot more on defense than we want to see, but still going to be a big part of that offense there for Jacksonville. Matthew Golden is kind of getting overlooked a little bit. First round receiver. Remember, first time that they've taken a wide receiver in the first round of Green Bay since 2002. So you got Jaden Reed dealing with a Jones fracture in his foot. Romeo Dobbs, I think, is just a guy. Matthew Golden could be awesome for Jordan Love. So there's some good rookie wide receivers. And then, a little bit later than that, don't forget about this kid in Las Vegas. Deontay Thornton Jr. He's going to make a lot of big plays for the Raiders. Or I don't know if he led the FBS, but over 23 yards per catch last season in Tennessee. He's 6'5" and runs a 4.3 40. Like that just doesn't happen very often. That's like Randy Moss, So could be an absolute steal there for the Raiders with what they got with the rookie there.
I know you came out today, Jamey, on CBSSports.com/fantasy. Your sleepers 4.0. Who are some sleepers for the key positions that we could target?
So what I did was for this story was basically anybody you can get in round 10 or later. So 120th overall. Quarterback is kind of a lot of good options. One of my favorites is Trevor Lawrence, just because I think he'll benefit really well from the new offense there with Liam Cohen, the head coach. Caleb Williams now fall into this range. He was a breakout candidate at the start of the season. So good opportunity to just take him with a late round pick. And CJ Stroud, look, he was a bust last year, but now with the revamped receiving core and a very good schedule and now a suspect run game, I think Stroud's going to be, fun to potentially bounce back. And you could, he was a top 5 quarterback on draft boards last year. Now you can take him as a, second quarterback with a late round pick. Running back, some of the rookies that I mentioned already, Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon, Bashal Tootin, Jaden Blue, just these rookies that have a chance to at some point play a pretty prominent role. So easy guys to draft with the mid to late round picks. In this range is actually my favorite player, which is going to be in my breakouts column, is Braylon Allen of the Jets. I think he's going to play a big role along with Breece Hall. And then if Hall gets hurt, we could see him just have an absolutely fantastic season. And then at the wide receiver spot, you have Jalen Coker now, who benefits with the change of Adam Thielen not being there. Darnell Mooney, who you got to just keep an eye on his shoulder injury. Josh Downs has fallen a little too far in drafts, in my opinion. He could be really fun with Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. And then I like to take shots when you get late in drafts. This is just great advice if you can stick to it. Don't take the players that have safe floors when you're in the double-digit rounds. Take the guys that could absolutely blow up. Cedric Tillman last year played 3 games after they traded Amari Cooper in Cleveland, and he was over 18 PPR points per game. He may be an awful bust. Joe Flacco is going to throw the hell out of the ball in Cleveland because that's just what Joe Flacco does. He YOLOs every situation that he's been in since he's come out of retirement, including Cleveland in 2023. And so I think you're going to get great production from Cedric Tillman in stretches, but he's the type of guy I think that could win you leagues some weeks. So he's a guy to take late. Colston Loveland at tight end, like his situation in Chicago as the rookie there. And then there's just a bunch of good veteran tight ends you get late. Jake Ferguson, Dallas Goedert. Keep an eye on Chigo Okonkwo as well in Tennessee.
Finally here, Jamey, who are some of the bigger names that you've been hearing in drafts that you just think they're going way too high, you'd rather stay away from?
Breece Hall would be one, just because I think Braylon Allen's going to have a big role. And even if there was nobody really emerging, you're looking at a running quarterback that doesn't necessarily throw to his receiver, to his running backs the same way, let's say, like Aaron Rodgers did. So I think the reception total could be a problem for Breece Hall, and he's going to be in a committee with Braylon Allen and potentially Isaiah Davis. I'm still nervous about Terry McLaurin. I'm glad that he signed his contract, and kudos to him for getting what he wanted. But last 2 seasons, there have been some holdouts and hold-ins that have just not performed at a high level and suffered some injuries that are just worth keeping an eye on. So McLaurin makes me nervous. Trying to think. Caleb Johnson, like I mentioned, he's somebody that I'm a little concerned about just because of the role there. As a matter of fact, like I said, I'm doing a live draft right now. Right in front of me, my colleague Adam Azer just took Caleb Johnson. I'm going to take Jalen Warren because I think he's the better running back for Pittsburgh this season. And then a couple guys that are just, for me right now, like they're off my draft board. Joe Mixon, we don't know when he's going to play. Unfortunate situation there with his foot, so may not play at all this season. Jaden Reed is now making me really nervous. He's playing through a Jones fracture in his foot. He's going to try to play through it at least. And then Quinshon Judkins. I don't know what's going to happen when he signs, but like I said, for me, I'm just going to take Dylan Sampson and even Jerome Ford. I just don't know if Judkins will play at all this year based on how things are unfolding.
Awesome. Excellent job as always, Jamey. I'm looking forward to next week. We'll actually be able to talk stardom, sit-em. We'll go through all the rankings for week 1. Next time we talk, we'll have a Thursday Night Football, Cowboys and Eagles. Tell everybody how they can hear you leading up to week number 1.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of drafts going on, like you said. So Labor Day weekend is always our busiest weekend. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll be keeping everything up to date there. CBSSports.com. So I'll have the latest sleepers, breakouts, and busts. But obviously, the rankings are the biggest thing for your drafts. I'll update the tiers as well. And then, you can always find our podcast. We go 6 days a week. CBSSports.com. You can find us on YouTube as well. It's Fantasy Football Today. I think we're the best podcast in the fantasy space. And so hopefully you'll get some great tips, not just for your drafts, but also throughout the season.
Awesome. Great job, Jamey. Thanks, man. Looking forward to next week.
Appreciate it. Good talking to you, bud.